Parashat Shoftim. There is a road somewhere in the hill country, and on it a body. A traveler struck down between one town and the next, lying in the open field. No one saw it happen. No one knows his name or the name of the man who killed him. And the Torah, which has spent the entire parasha laying down the architecture of a just society, courts and judges, kings and their limits on their power, priests and prophets, the laws of evidence and of war, turns in its closing scene to this: a killing was no killer, a crime was no court, a death that the whole apparatus of justice cannot reach. But what happened next is one of the strangest rituals in the entire Torah. Elders of the surrounding towns come out and measure the distance from the corpse to each settlement to establish which is nearest. The elders of that town take a heifer that has never been worked, bring it down to a hard unplowed valley, and break its neck. The eglah arufah, the heifer whose neck is broken. They wash their hands over it and declare, "Our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it." It is worth pausing on that declaration, because it is very strange. The sages of Mishnah paused over it too. Would it enter our minds, they asked in Tractate Sotah, that the elders of the court are shedders of blood? These are the most honored men in the town. No one suspects them. Why does it need to protest their innocence at all? The answer they give reframes the whole scene. The elders are not swearing that they did not wield the knife. They are swearing, in Rashi's rendering, that we did not see him and let him depart without food and without levaya, without accompaniment, without someone to walk him safely to the edge of the town. Their oath is not about the murder, it's about the care they owed a stranger and might have failed to give. And now the difficulty deepens, for the question that the Torah is asking is no longer who is guilty, it is who is responsible, and its answer reaches far past the unknown hand that struck the blow. It reaches to a whole town that had never touched him. Ibn Ezra notices where this law falls. It comes directly after the laws of war, of killing between nations, and having dealt with bloodshed on a vast scale. The Torah turns, without lowering its gaze, to a single anonymous death on a country road, and treats it with no less gravity. One life unnamed and unwitnessed is a matter for the elders of Israel and the priests of God. Consider what modern social science have learned about exactly this situation: a stranger in distress and many people who might have helped. In 1968, two psychologists, John Darley and Bibi Latani, ran an experiment that has become a classic. Students believed that they joined a discussion over the intercom about the pressures of university life. Partway through, one of the voices, an actor, appeared to suffer a seizure, choking, calling for help, and then falling silent. Each student thought he was overhearing a real emergency. The only thing that changed from subject to subject was how many other people each believed were also listening. When a student thought he alone could hear it, 85% went for help. When he believed 4 others could hear him too, only 31% did. And those who acted more slowly. The more witnesses there were, the less likely any single one of them was to move. Darley and Latane called it the diffusion of responsibility. When responsibility belongs to everyone, it belongs to no one. Each bystander, aware that others could act, feels the weight of obligation divided and thinned and passed along until the person who most needs help is surrounded by people and utterly alone. It is not mostly that we are cruel, it is that responsibility spread across a crowd evaporates. Now turn to the road and to the body in the field. This is precisely the situation the Torah legislates for, and what it does is remarkable. A body is found in an open country between 2 towns with no witnesses and no confessions. It is a perfect diffusion of responsibility. Not in my field, not in my town, not in my watch. Every settlement in the region could look away, and each will be telling the truth. The Torah's response is not to preach that the people should care more, it is to build. It commands that the responsibility may be measured literally with a cord, and assigned. Find the nearest city, name it, its elders. The men least plausibly guilty must come down into the valley, perform the rite in the open, and say aloud that they did not fill this man. Maimonides, in the Guide of the Perplexed, saw the practical genius of it. The whole solemn public procedures sets the people talking, and someone who knows something may come forward, because the shame of staying silent has become unbearable. The silence in which responsibility hides is deliberately broken. The Torah's answer to diffusion, in other words, is concentration, where responsibility was spread out until it disappeared. The law gathered it back to a single point, fixes it upon named people, and makes them answer to the sight of the community and God. No one is permitted to be a mere bystander. Someone must always be able to say, "This was ours to prevent." Here we reach the distinction on which the whole passage turns. The difference between guilt and responsibility. They are not the same thing. To be guilty is to have done the deed. The elders are empathetically not guilty. The Torah cannot be clearer. To be responsible is something wider and quieter. It is to be answerable for the conditions in which the deed became possible. The road left unwatched, the traveler left unaccompanied, the vulnerability that no one thought to attend to. A society that recognizes only guilt asks a single question: who did this? And when it cannot find the culprit, it closes the file. A society that understands responsibility asks a harder question: how did we let this happen? And cannot close the file until it is answered. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. This parasha commands, and the pursuit does not end as a point where the guilty party cannot be found. That is why we are, all of us, more prone to this diffusion than we care to admit. Every society has its bodies on the road, the death that no single person caused and therefore no one owns. The child who slipped through every safety net because each agency assumed the other was watching. The elderly neighbor that dies alone and is found weeks later on a street full of people. The stranger, the migrant, the one outside our circle, whom everyone sees and no one accompanies. Ours is the most connected age in human history, and the connection has not cured the bystander problem. It may have deepened it. For a person linked to millions can end up feeling answerable to none. The temptation of the large anonymous society is to dissolve into a crowd of witnesses, each assuming that someone else will act, that the responsibility is being carried somewhere else further down the line. The Torah's quiet, radical claim is that compassion cannot safely be left to a feeling, because feelings diffuse. It must be built on the structures by which we live, named roles, named duties, someone who's answerable, so that when a stranger is in danger, there is always a hand reaching towards him and always a voice that says, "This one is mine to protect." That is what a covenant is, as against a mere crowd. A society in which people have agreed in advance not to look away. The elder's oath, in the end, is not a deference. It is a standard, the standard to which every leader and every one of us is quietly being held. So the rite ends where the decent society begins, with hands washed clean, not by ceremony, but by care already given, and a road along which no traveler walks unaccompanied. We cannot prevent every death or uncover every hidden hand, but we can refuse to be bystanders. We can walk the stranger to the edge of the town, and in that refusal, bring a little more light into the world and heal the fractured world. Shabbat Shalom.